Talk about football.
All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 6 of the We Like Football podcast. I am, of course, Hayden Yarashunas, joined as always by my buddy, Andy Watkins. Andy, how are you, buddy?
I've been better. How are you?
I am fantastic. I got to watch 7 football games over 3 days. Super exciting weekend. It was awesome to just kind of be glued to my TV amongst other things. This was the best weekend in football that we have had in quite some time.
To say the very least, the weekend was replete with scintillating games across the board, some more so than others, but just to have a couch-locked weekend chock full of football for 11 consecutive hours, Saturday, Sunday, and then to top it off, of course, with college football Super Bowl. We're going to talk about all that and more. Why don't you take us away, friend?
Yeah, coming up on this episode of We Like Football. Before we get started, got some shout outs that I do have to. I would be remiss if I did not shout these people out. First of all, Tim Chandler, buddy, I don't know if our paths have ever crossed in real life, but you are an absolute soldier. I am happy that you're on our team. We appreciate you putting our name out there, recommending us on Twitter, giving us a listen every week. We truly, truly appreciate it. Shout out to you, Tim Chandler. Also have to shout out to my mother-in-law, Kelly. I had no idea that she listened to us on our show. And the way that I found out, Andy, on Friday, I had just woken up. I had just opened my eyes, literally still in my bed. My wife comes into our bedroom, no good morning or hello or anything like that. First thing she says is, "My mom can't believe that you don't know who Summer Sanders is." So that is how I found out that my mother-in-law listens to this podcast. Hello, Kelly. I will try to do better with the pop culture references as we move forward. I knew that the life that we live here, that's filled with fame and fortune, would have its ups and its downs. It's a tricky business. Let's jump right into football because there's certainly a ton of it to talk about. We got Saturday and Sunday football, 3 games in each day. So to start on Saturday, we got the Indianapolis Colts going to Buffalo. It was a really nice day there. The fans looked like they had an absolute ball. It looked like an awesome atmosphere out there. The Buffalo Bills beat the Indianapolis Colts 27-24, again, 105 on Saturday. The Bills continue to roll. They've won their last 7 games straight. What'd you take away from that game, buddy?
Just an awesome job by Josh Allen and company. Kind of what we expected. As we said last week, there was a recipe for Indianapolis to keep it close, and really they did so. For much of the first half, I thought, kind of controlled the game, really, in terms of time of possession, field position, things like that. Defense did well to clamp down on Josh Allen as best they could, but you kind of saw, as we've seen for the past 2 months now, that the Bills are just a wagon offensively. They're so formidable. They're so tough to stop for 60 minutes. Specifically, Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, those two shined again. Allen, 26 of 35, 324 yards, 2 scores, and another 11 carries, 54 yards, 1 score on the ground. Just the definition of a dual-threat quarterback in today's NFL. His connection with Stephon Diggs, they both continue to flourish. Diggs in this one, 6 catches, 128 yards, 1 score. Buffalo now sets up a matchup with the Baltimore Ravens next week, which I'm very, very looking forward to that. We'll talk about that obviously a little later on, but just impressive by Buffalo offensively, and then defensively to come up with the key stops they needed. Trey White had a huge deflection near the end of the game. It was on the 3rd down prior to the 4th that the Indy failed on to lose a game. But Trey White, the play before, had a huge breakup. We saw that their defense is formidable and can come up with timely stops when they need to. They look well equipped to continue rocking after their first playoff win in 25 years.
Yeah, certainly an impressive outing, I guess, on both sides of the ball. What sort of stuck out to me was how Josh Allen was used as that dual threat quarterback, like you mentioned, with the 11 carries and the 54 yards. But those weren't scrambles. Not all of them were scrambles, I guess I should say. There were designed runs for Josh Allen. That dude does not want to go down. Usually if you see a quarterback take off, they're looking to get down and protect their body. That dude wants all the smoke. I have been loving watching Josh Allen play football this season. I'm excited for the matchup that they have upcoming with the Baltimore Ravens. On the other side in that game, Phillip Rivers, who might have played his last professional football game, if he did, fantastic career. It was a whole lot of fun to watch for a long time. Went 27 of 46, 309 yards, and 2 touchdowns. We talked about it on the last pod, right? The recipe for the Colts to sort of win the game was to dominate time of possession, which I don't necessarily know that I would call it a dominant performance. They did in the first half, but it ended up at the end of the game being 34 minutes for the Colts to just 26 minutes for the Bills. So they still did win time of possession, but we also mentioned to kind of live and die through the run game, let Jonathan Taylor touch the football a bunch of times. He got 21 carries in this game for 78 yards and 1 touchdown, right? So they did stick to the recipe that we thought would give them the best chance at success. The Bills were just sort of able to edge them out kind of at the end of that game. Michael Pittman also for the Colts had 5 receptions for 90 yards on Saturday at 1. Not a bad way to start off the weekend.
Yeah, Indy largely played well, I thought. Like I said, they kind of controlled the game, I thought, for much of the first half, and then even withstood Buffalo's kind of onslaught offensively and were able to punch back and very nearly have a shot there at the end. I think Buffalo, just stood out as the superior team. They're moving on. We'll move on to the next game on slate, the second game on Saturday. The number 6 Los Angeles Rams traveling to the number 3 seed NFC West champion Seattle Seahawks. LA came out victorious in that game by the score of 30-20. You have noted here in our spiffy document that the Seahawks sucked something serious. So why don't you tell me about your observations?
Boy, did they. The stats weren't super lopsided or anything like that, but Russell Wilson went 11 of 27. He didn't look sharp. The offense looked out of sync. He threw that 1 pick 6 on kind of a smoke screen that was red all the way, and there was just no chance. Like everybody and their brother knew that was going to be a pick 6 as long as it was caught and held on to. I didn't anticipate, like when I was looking at the matchups before this weekend, I didn't anticipate this game to be one of the better ones. I thought that it was going to be between this one and the Bears and Saints that we're going to talk about later on that might kind of be on the lower end of the spectrum. But Seattle did not look like they deserved to be in the playoffs. They didn't look like they were they didn't look like they should be on the field with the Rams, who also didn't look super impressive, at least on the offensive side of the football. Defenses is something that we could touch on in a little bit. Jared Goff went 9 of 19 for 155 yards and 1 touchdown. They did start John Wolford. He got taken away, I believe, in an ambulance. It was a really scary neck kind of injury that thankfully turned out to be what they called a stinger. So we'll kind of monitor that and see, who goes under center for LA this week. They haven't named a starting quarterback yet, but really just kind of a lackluster game, at least on the offensive side of the football.
Yeah, there were obviously bright spots from the Rams' performance. Defensively, they continue to be a force, and that was even with the absence of Aaron Donald for much of the second half. As you said, they have some injuries offensively. Defensively, he's a concern as well. I know his ribs are banged up. They'd be a huge blow to lose him as they look forward to next week. But just to talk about this game a little more defensively, they played really well. Pressured Russell Wilson all day long with the rest of the horses in their front seven. Leonard Floyd continues to eat. I think they said in those 3 games now he had 7 sacks against Russell Wilson and the Seahawks. So Leonard Floyd continues to bounce back nicely. Again, Morgan Fox, Michael Brockers, Troy Reeder, Darius Randall, even Jalen Ramsey largely put the clamps on DK Metcalf, though his counting numbers do look good at the end of the day. 5 catches, 96 yards, and 2 scores. DK did flash at times. He made some plays. But again, LA defensively largely clamped down on the Seahawks for much of this game's competitive stage, at least. It was a 10-point game, but Seattle added a late touchdown. LA got up by as much as 17. So they really kind of had their way with them. I think it just I noted last week, Sean McVay last week, heading into this game was 5-3 against Seattle. Pete Carroll, Russell Wilson, now make it 6-3. So McVay continues to get the better of them, and I think it's fair to say that at this point in the rivalry. Again, they're banged up. They have a lot of key guys who could miss time, including the quarterbacks, Aaron Donald, as you mentioned, or as I mentioned, and Cooper Kupp is another one whose status is questionable at this time. So they're going to have a lot of work to do heading into Green Bay. But this was an impressive showing from them, especially on the defensive side of the football. Seattle's got a lot to figure out.
Yeah, I know I sounded a little bit more doom and gloom. Just as kind of a disclaimer, I'm always going to favor the offensive side of the football. It's what I enjoy watching a little bit more. It's who I am in my coaching life. So that is sort of why I came out that said Seattle sucked something serious. That the offensive side of the ball, it was not in sync. DK Metcalf had that blow up on the sideline, so to speak, came over and spiked his helmet. It just kind of painted the picture of how the Seahawks were not on the same page offensively. We won't harp on that because there was other fantastic football to talk about from that from this weekend. The nightcap on Saturday was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers heading into Landover, Maryland, to take on the NFC East champion Washington football team. Tampa Bay came away victorious from that game, 31-23. Hats off to the Washington football team. They refused to lay down and die. They fought till the bitter end. They were a classic example of X's and O's versus Jimmy's and Joe's. I've mentioned that on this podcast before here. There's certain times where the opposition just is a little bit more talented than you are on your roster, and that kind of reared its head on Saturday night. Shout out to Taylor Heineke. That dude, I don't know how impressive he will look moving forward, but he certainly fought his ass off in this game. He went 26-44, had 306 yards and a touchdown through the air, also threw an interception, but had 6 carries for 46 yards. And the one rushing touchdown, that was absolutely just him putting kind of the team on his back. An outstanding individual effort to score his lone rushing touchdown.
Oh, yeah, I had a load of fun watching this game, watching Taylor Heineke. I had to look again. I looked it up Saturday night. I had to look again just to refresh my memory. The Old Dominion product. You've watched the Steelers with me. I yell at my TV a lot during Steelers games, but otherwise, I tend to pretty calmly, just sit back and take in a game where I'm neutral. Like in this one, I didn't have a rooting interest. When Heineke had that touchdown run in the third quarter to make it where he dove for the pylon, I'm sure you remember the one. That made it a 2-point game, if I'm not mistaken, but just the absurdity of that play. He shrunk himself down in the pocket and then just squirted out of there from out of nowhere, seemingly. Got the edge like you wouldn't expect for kind of a twerpy looking guy, really. And again, as you said, hats off to him. Remarkable performance. Statistically, 26-44, 306 yards, a touchdown, a pick, 6 carries, 46 yards, and that touchdown I mentioned, the one that made me jump up off my couch and say, "Oh my God!" Remarkable day by him. He, at the very least, earned himself a roster spot in Washington or elsewhere. He will get a look thanks to this. To go toe-to-toe with Tom Brady in the playoffs is no small feat. So kudos to him. Kudos to the Washington football team. They really played over their heads all year long, and I think this performance deserves all the respect.
Yeah, and we had talked about the Washington football team's strength being their defensive line. They did look good up on the defensive line as well, and we said it again. The recipe for if you're not going to stop Tom Brady, but to slow him down is to get some pressure on him. Tom Brady had a pretty nice day, also 22 of 40, 381 yards and 2 touchdowns on his end. Found Mike Evans 6 times. Mike Evans had 119 yards. Receiving, Antonio Brown and Chris Godwin each had 1 receiving touchdown. Leonard Fournette had a pretty nice day as well, had 93 yards on the ground and 1 rushing touchdown. Again, hats off to the Washington football team. Fantastic story. Ron Rivera is an inspiration kind of to everybody with just what he's overcome with cancer. Alex Smith has been an inspiration, even though I know he didn't play in this game, but they have a lot of good stories in that Washington football team locker room will be interesting to see how they put it together moving forward.
Yeah, and I think it is fair to say they look to have a strong upward trajectory. They will have to figure out some things in the quarterback room and et cetera, but you do like the path they're on, at least seem to be led by good coach in Rivera and good assistants and et cetera. But Tampa Bay is the team moving on. They're the team we should look at a little further here. As you mentioned, all the typical offensive stars, 8. This is nothing out of the ordinary. Even against the game, Washington defense, Tampa Bay got theirs, as they will. This is simply too formidable a group. A defense can hope to contain them for a bit. I don't think any is going to stop them for 4 quarters. Fortunately, they do. The team playing them has an offense equipped to go toe-to-toe with them, the New Orleans Saints. Tampa Bay has a much tougher outing ahead against New Orleans, who they lost to both times this year. Neither game was particularly close. We'll talk about that a little later on. But that wraps it up for the Saturday slate. Moving on to Sunday afternoon, we got a rubber match between the Baltimore Ravens and the Tennessee Titans. Tennessee had kind of had Baltimore's number of late. They beat them in the 2 previous outings, including last year's playoff meeting. Baltimore, though, got the upper hand in this one, wound up coming out on top 20-13, just was kind of a classic kind of physical back and forth battle between 2 budding rivals. What did you think about this one?
Yep. So we had talked about in pods previous about the Titans defense kind of being an Achilles heel or something that might hinder their ability to be successful in the playoffs. They came out in the first half and had 4 sacks, right? So they obviously showed up ready to play, obviously could not contain that offense for very long. Few can, to be perfectly honest. This is a fun, bitter rival that just kind of has popped up seemingly out of nowhere, but it's one that I'm always tuned into and looking forward to. The Ravens did end up getting their revenge. We remember back in the earlier in the season when the Titans kind of came out and had some words with the Ravens on their logo. Now the Ravens got to kind of stomp on the Titans logo at the end of the game there after Marcus Peters game clinching interception. So certainly some bad blood, certainly some bad intentions that come along with it, and I am here for it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. As you mentioned, the previous Donnybrook and then this follow-up at the midfield stripe. But that shouldn't take away from what was a well-contested, hotly contested back-and-forth affair for really all of Sunday afternoon, kind of what we expected it to be. As you mentioned last week, there is kind of a game script that the Ravens tend to follow and are more successful when they do follow, and they stuck to it this time. Lamar Jackson stayed in his, I don't know how to word this, but his passing attempts stayed within the range where the Ravens seem to like to keep them. 17 of 24, 179 yards and a pick. Not really like an astounding outing, but did well to manage the game from that point. Did make some key throws on third downs to Mark Andrews, Marquise Brown, and the like, but really shown on the ground as he tends to. 16 carries, 136 yards and a score. But as mentioned, Marquise Brown did make some plays through the air, 7 catches, 109 yards. Really strong outing by the Ravens on offense, just controlled the game in terms of field position, third down conversions, even though the box score doesn't necessarily espouse that as much as it should, so to speak. And then on the opposite side, the Ravens defense really played nicely. After a 10-point first quarter from Tennessee, they really clamped down on them, came up with key stops, takeaways, Marcus Peters interception, of course, some sacks and timely moments. They look like a group that could absolutely give the Buffalo Bills fits next week. And again, I'm highly looking forward to that matchup.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. The biggest thing that the Baltimore Ravens defense did was hold Derrick Henry, the workhorse, the Mack truck that is Derrick Henry, to 40 yards on the ground. It seemed like every time Derrick Henry touched the football, there was a Raven that was immediately there to greet him with some physicality and with some bad intentions. We see teams, it's not like Derrick Henry is not a secret. It's not like teams don't know that when they travel to Tennessee or when Tennessee comes to town, that Derrick Henry is not going to be what the offense runs through. The Ravens were very, very successful in containing Derrick Henry. Also on the offensive side here, you mentioned stuff that will not show up in the box score. Another thing that will not show up in the box score is the Ravens fullback, Pat Ricard, is 6'3", 311 pounds. That's right, 6'3", 311 pounds. And the dude runs like a freaking gazelle.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
it is so much fun to see him out in space and catching the ball. But I mean, obviously what fullbacks are intended to do is just to go be essentially an extra blocker. It's why watching the Ravens offense is so much fun, because in the modern NFL, you know, we see these teams that are going to stretch the field out. They're going to make you defend 53 1/3 yards horizontally, right, and defend the whole field. And then Greg Roman, the offensive coordinator of the Ravens, is like, oh, that's cute. I'm going to put a running back at quarterback and bring in a third guard. Good luck, buddy. Like, it's so much fun to watch them go out and play football on the offensive side of the ball. On the other side, Ryan Tannehill had went 18 for 26 this week, 165 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. A.J. Brown also had a solid day, 6 receptions, 83 yards, and a touchdown. We're kind of used to seeing him make some big, impressive plays. He is also a really big dude. Imagine him and DK Metcalf as the wide receiver core at Ole Miss way back in the day. Like, those are some big old dudes. But just to kind of like wrap it up, when Derrick Henry is successful, the entire offense looks better. Derrick Henry being contained to the 40 yards kind of trickled down to the Titans' offensive performance as a whole, I think.
Yeah, it was kind of a Belichickian strategy, so to speak, taking away their best weapon. Many teams try, but few have contained Derrick Henry, the NFL's leading rusher, the 2,000-yard rusher, the way the Ravens did. So kudos to them. Maybe the class of the AFC North, certainly not. I'm sorry, we're not there yet. We'll get there when we get there. There's a game in between on Saturday. The number 7 seed Chicago Bears traveling to play the New Orleans Saints. Kind of what we expected, not really a barn burner. Although the box score tends to say it was a little closer than it felt. Maybe Saints won 21-9, but the Bears touchdown was really an impressive snag by Jimmy Graham, but in absolute garbage time the very last play of the game. The best thing about this one probably was it being aired on Nickelodeon. I know you seem to have been in the dark during your childhood about Nickelodeon, but I know you took this game in on Nickelodeon. So what'd you think?
Oh, I 1000% did. Yeah, no, I might not have been up on the aggro crag or whatever you made up last week, or Summer Sanders again. Sorry, Kelly, but having a football game where when somebody scores, there are virtual slime cannons in the end zone, seeing SpongeBob in between the uprights, having young Sheldon come out and tell me what pass interference is. It was just so much fun to watch that game be aired on Nickelodeon. We're going to talk a little bit later that maybe this should be a continuing trend, and maybe we should try out some other channels and see how it goes with that. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. I thought the broadcast was fun too. There, Nate Burleson was there to be like a legitimate football presence, and then you had the girl with the Cardi B impressions and the other dude that was in there. You had the kid on the sideline as well doing the sweet Barack Obama impression. It was an all around fun time. It was a fun way to experience a football game.
Yeah, I was a fan of that kid sideline reporter you mentioned, Lex Lumpkin, if I'm not mistaken. Notably, he did announce that Mitch Trubisky was awarded with the MVP, I guess the Nickelodeon Most Valuable Player Award. Trubisky, 19 of 29, 199 yards and a touchdown. I don't know that I would have given him that award, but, I'm glad to see him come away with something in what was another, kind of up and down season, maybe his last in Chicago. For the Bears side, David Montgomery, 12 carries, 31 yards. Allen Robinson shined again, 6 catches, 55 yards. He was the bright point of their offense all year. This game was no exception. But again, the Bears offense didn't have many bright points to speak of, and that's why they came away 9 points, kind of a dud in their one-and-done playoff season. Defensively, they did well to stand up for the Saints for a while, but they didn't really have the same kind of punch they did back a few years ago when Matt Nagy's offense was kind of more of a compliment, so to say. The Saints didn't really have their way with them offensively, but you kind of felt like they controlled the game throughout. Drew Brees, Alvin Kamara, Michael Thomas all continued to eat Breeze 28 of 39, 265 yards, 2 touchdowns. Kamara 23 carries, 99 yards to score. Michael Thomas 5 catches, 73 yards. Setting up a rematch, a rubber match with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, their division rival. Drew Brees versus Tom Brady, possibly, very likely for the last time. There is a very, very high speculation that Drew Brees will retire at the conclusion of this season. So this may be the last we see of Brees, depending on how next week goes.
Yeah, depending on the outcome. So to touch on like the Mitch Trubisky thing, it really makes you concerned for America's future when the kids vote Mitch Trubisky as the first ever Nickelodeon most valuable player, the Nickelodeon's valuable player.
Pumpkin.
Having such a poor day. Hello, Amanda. It's always nice when we have guests on our show unexpectedly. I love it. It's awesome. We got to do that more. I think we got to do that more. Get some people in here. There was another thing that happened that is usually not going to happen on Nickelodeon. It was Anthony Miller got ejected for punching Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. And again, televised on Nickelodeon, just walked up, punched him in the face. You'll remember back in week 8 when Javon Wims was also ejected for punching Chauncey Gardner-Johnson in that game. Started a little skirmish. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is also the person who Michael Thomas earlier in the year was suspended for punching in the face at practice. You got to wonder if he is just a master at poking the bear or poking the cage, so to speak, or if he just has a face that looks like it needs to get punched.
Yeah, he does continue to pop up in these incidents, always on the end. That does not look to be the guilty party. Apparently, he's never been the one disciplined, but he does keep finding himself in these scraps, these Donniebrooks, these snafus, what will.
Brouhaha.
Brouhaha.
Yeah, brouhaha.
I don't know. Anthony Miller, shameful. This is a kids program. You should know better. Really, I'm just babbling to save time because I don't want to go to the dark place we have to go to next.
Which is, of course, the nightcap of the weekend. Super Wild Card weekend was a fantastic weekend for football. As we go through this, as painful as it may be, let's just keep in the back of our heads that it was a fantastic weekend of football. The nightcap that we had, the number 6 Cleveland Browns head into Pittsburgh to take on the number 3 Steelers at Heinz Field. The Browns come away victorious from this football game, 48-37. Got off to a very hot start in conjunction with a very, very cold start from Pittsburgh. End up winning their first playoff game since 1995, the first road playoff win since 1969, and the first win in Pittsburgh since 2003. So I got all of the accolades out of the way for you, buddy, so you can just let it all out and tell us how you feel.
They were 11-0.
That is factual. That is factual, yep.
They won 11 games and lost none. This is shameful. I still feel sick to my stomach. I've had trouble sleeping. I'm not doing okay. Big Ben, Marquise Pouncey, Juju all crying on the sidelines. Throw me in with them. I'm not doing good. This is despicable. At home in the playoffs against the Cleveland Browns, who you historically own, who Ben Roethlisberger holds a 24, now 3-1 record against. To come out so flat, so disgustingly unenthused for a playoff football game, to get punched in the mouth like that is shameful. It's horrible. Head should roll, but nothing will happen because the standard is the standard. I don't know what to make of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Some of me wants to be optimistic and say they still return much of the team that went 11-0, some pending free agents notwithstanding. But after this, this seemed like their best chance to make any sort of noise this year. This seemed like maybe the last year before Ben Roethlisberger's Super Bowl window shut, so to speak. He will be going into his age 39 season next year if he does return. and to just come out and really just miserably be trounced. They put their defense in quite a hole, but the defense, spare them no shame. They were supposed to be the backbone of this team, the group that propped them up. The offense did them no favors putting them in those spots, but that used to be their forte, their specialty, quick change defense, so to speak. When the possession changes suddenly, they would come out, bounce back, hold the team to a 3-and-out, hold them to a field goal, give them a chance, a puncher's chance at least. There was none of that. Pittsburgh's defense played soft. Cleveland wanted it more. Kudos to them. I said last week Pittsburgh should roll, returning their captains, Ben Roethlisberger, Marquise Pouncey, TJ Watt, Cam Hayward. Those guys were the reason this team lost. They were all either invisible or the ones making critical mistakes, starting with Marquise Pouncey's snap into the Allegheny and going from there just through the remainder of the first quarter. I guess you tried to be the optimist and tell me we should give them some kudos for bouncing back, making a half a game of it. They got it down to a 12-point game in the third quarter after falling behind by as much as 28. But again, this team was too talented, too formidable at one point to now have vindicated all the haters and losers, of which there are many who said they were the worst 11-0 team in NFL history. I guess they're right, because to get knocked around like this is shameful.
Yep. Friend, as long as my heart beats, I will be here as your optimist when things are not going well, especially in the realm of football. With that being said, you use the terminology getting punched in the mouth, and I think that is the most appropriate way to sum up what happened in Pittsburgh on Sunday. We are big eye test folks, and we know that the Cleveland Browns have a solid offensive line, even though they started a guard who hadn't met anybody due to COVID restrictions and not being able to practice in quite some time and what have you. But the first rushing touchdown, I believe it was, the Steelers got caught in like a stunt, but just the way that the offensive line came off the ball and was able to reset the line of scrimmage, it seemed like the linemen were putting the defensive line into the laps of the safeties, not just the linebackers. Like they really got some solid movement. I thought that the Browns offensive line played pretty well all day. Baker Mayfield, say what you want about him. I know that there's some jokes about his commercials, which I honestly find funny. I'm not going to lie to you. I hope that he continues to make them. He went 21 of 34, 263 yards and 3 touchdowns. Nick Chubb had 18 carries for 76 yards. Jarvis Landry had 5 receptions for 92 yards and a touchdown. Ben Roethlisberger, not for nothing, he attempted 68 passes in the game, mostly because when you go into what was it, the end of the first quarter, they were down, I believe it was 28 to nothing. Yep. At the end of the first quarter. So you have no other you have no other option but to throw the ball. Not that they run the ball effectively, but Ben Roethlisberger had 501 yards. 500 yards is a solid day. He had 4 touchdowns. He also had 4 picks. Really looked like a shell of himself. It's sad to say, and it's hard to come by an end of an era. It does seem like the Ben Roethlisberger era may be starting to come to its end, and everybody kind of goes through it. James Conner, I mentioned the struggles for the Steelers rushing the football, had 37 yards on the ground, also had a touchdown. Juju had a solid day despite being caught dancing on the field. Had 13 receptions for 157 yards and 1 touchdown. I will go on record and say I have no problem with Juju Smith-Schuster's TikToks. Anybody's really. It's sort of the day and age that we live in. Young people appreciate social media. They put like high stakes into it, sort of thing. So that's something that's going to come, especially as more young people start to come up into the NFL through drafts and what have you. I don't have a problem with that, but it's worth noting that you are writing a check. So if you are not cashing that check, which again, Juju had 157 yards and a touchdown, he played pretty well. But when you lose, that's always going to be something that's talked about in the media.
Yeah. For what it's worth, his teammate Chase Claypool tried to add some clarity to Juju's interview in another one and said that he was implying that they had always respected the Browns, that this was no different. And I think that is a fair argument to be made that he could have been saying that as well, because it didn't seem overly malicious. It really wasn't much to me. It did seem like Cleveland did indeed use it as some motivation. We heard Baker Mayfield, Jarvis Landry, Myles Garrett, and others in Instagram videos and sideline interviews and just snippets that cameras picked up as they were running into the tunnel, etc., yelling again, "The Browns is the Browns." So they decided to use it as motivation, and they certainly came out better for it. So again, kudos to them. They'll move on to Kansas City at what seemed to be improbably going into the year. They do have a puncher's chance right in the motivation they have now. Clearly, they are a highly motivated football team. I like what they've done all year. I don't want to discredit them because, they really came out and imposed their will, out physical the team that is supposed to be the scary, imposing Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers, I guess we'll shut the door on their 2020-21 season. They have some real soul searching to do, some things to figure out, because it appears to be the end of the road for this iteration of the Steelers. I don't think they're going any further than they did, as evidenced by this. Yeah.
All right. So that was fun. Going back to optimism. So now that that's over, the emotional investment can kind of go away. You can relax, take a load off, and just take in all of the great football that we get to watch moving forward in the divisional round beginning this Saturday at 4:35. There's weird times for games in the divisional round. Always have been, always will be. The first game that we got on the slate, the number 6 LA Rams will travel into Lambeau Field. Will take on the Green Bay Packers. Once again, looking at weather this week, because I still want it to be something that we could talk about and have it be a factor. Green Bay on Saturday around that time is going to be a low of 18, a high of 32, mostly cloudy. Certainly not the tundra that everybody fears to go in and play. Not the Snow Bowl that we got to watch week 17 when the
Titans,
or week 16, excuse me, when the Titans played the Packers. But this is the first game that we have on the slate. Worth noting, the Rams lead the series all time, 47-46-2. Obviously, two teams that have seen each other quite a bit. Both teams are currently riding streaks. No, I think this is for a different game. I'm sorry. So
I didn't think
with
so.
this. No, I goofed up on that. We'll have our producer edit that part out. So this is the first game that we got on our slate. We mentioned the Rams coming out last week against Seattle. This is the first we get to see of the Packers in the playoffs this year. What are your initial thoughts on this one?
It would seem to highly, highly favor the Green Bay Packers at this point, being they are the number 1 seed, the home team. By all accounts, the more talented group, and especially because, as we had mentioned earlier, LA is facing a lot of concerns injury-wise. They were hesitant. Sean McVay was hesitant to declare a starting quarterback this week between Jared Goff, who was coming off a recent thumb surgery, and John Wolford, who again had that scary-looking stinger on the Jamal Adams hit where he had to leave in an ambulance. Again, Aaron Donald's banged up. He is expected to try to play through torn rib cartilage, and he's imposing nonetheless, as are his defensive cohorts. But if there's any group that is going to be able to impose their will on him, it's Aaron Rodgers, the year he's having, the season he's having, and his pass-catching weaponry, Devontae Adams, Robert Tonyan, Valdez Scantling, the running backs, Jones. It just seems like it's going to be too much for LA to overcome, add in their injury concerns and the disparity in talent. I can't see a recipe for LA to win this.
No, if it does happen, and I'm by no means predicting this, but if it does happen, it will be sort of a defensive slugfest if they can turn it into that, if LA can turn it into a defensive slugfest. I think that the Packers are just far too talented on offense for that to be a possibility. A matchup that's going to be fun to watch in this game, though, we mentioned last week we got to see Jalen Ramsey go up for the most part. There were some plays when he did not cover DK Metcalf, but Jalen Ramsey versus DK Metcalf last week. This week we get to see Jalen Ramsey versus Devontae Adams. So this is that classic popcorn gif with Michael Jackson just sitting there and shoveling the popcorn in his mouth. I am absolutely here for this season. Devontae Adams has 115 receptions, 1,374 yards, and 18 touchdowns. He's found the end zone. 18 touchdowns. It's not something to scoff at. He is first in the league. He's found the end zone more than anybody else. It's worth noting as well. I mean, you see week in and week out, Jalen Ramsey is put on the number one receiver and is usually pretty successful. This year, after week one, because he did have a tough out at week one against the Cowboys, he's only allowed 4.4 yards per target. The receiver who's trying to catch the football is only successful about 45% of the time when Jalen Ramsey is targeted, and he's not targeted quite a bit for good reason. He averages 4 targets per game. Again, that was this regular season. So it's going to be a lot of fun to watch Devontae Adams and Jalen Ramsey go at it. We look at 2 young, promising head coaches as well. You know, McVay, kind of the wonderkins from Washington, came into LA and was kind of like a godsend for a couple of years, maybe cooled off a little bit in more recent years, but still has been successful, right? In his 4th season, Sean McVay is 43-21 all time as a head coach. Matt LaFleur is so much fun to say, is 26-6 in only his 2nd season, but that's a pretty damn impressive record for Matt LaFleur. So it's going to be fun to watch. The outcome may be a little apparent and it might not be an ultra competitive game on the scoreboard, but there are reasons to kind of sit back and enjoy it. Also, just one more thing, I don't want to monopolize this or anything like that, but the Packers offensive line is currently rated number 2 as an offensive line unit on Pro Football Focus. Obviously, there is no David Bakhtiari, the Pro Bowl tackle. He tore his ACL towards the end of the season in a practice, absolutely devastating for the Packers. But this season, Rodgers has only been sacked 20 times all year, and 5 of them came in one game on December 19th against the Panthers. So the offensive line has held up pretty well. Whereas if you look on the other side of the field, the Rams had 5 sacks last week in Seattle. They had 53 in the regular season. They also have 7 straight games up to this point with multiple sacks. So that's going to be a fun matchup too with the Packers offensive line and the Rams defensive front.
Yeah, if there's any defense that's going to be able to make plays, get after Rodgers, it's the Rams. They've proven themselves to be the number 1 defense in football this year, and continue to do so. May probably strengthen their case week after week. This makes 2 very impressive outings in a row, and they'll be tasked with proving themselves again against, obviously, number 1 seed offensive buzzsaw that is the Green Bay Packers. I think because of all the Rams' defensive talent, again, they do have a chance. There's a recipe for success for them, but I think they're just too banged up, especially under center. I don't think that Cam Akers, Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, if he's able to go, I just don't think their weaponry is going to be enough to match what Green Bay will be able to produce, even against, obviously, an elite defense. That's just the nature of the game. Offense beats defense more often than not. When your offense is as good as Aaron Rodgers or Patrick Mahomes or, say, Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen, maybe.
Oh, that's interesting that you would bring up both of those quarterbacks' names, because they happen to be the signal caller for both of the teams that are squaring off in the nightcap on Saturday. We have the number 5 Baltimore Ravens heading into Buffalo. Again, great atmosphere last week. Looking forward to kind of seeing the Bills Mafia kind of have some fun there. I actually, right before we got on here, I was watching an interview with Lamar Jackson, who said he had never played in snow. It's not looking like we're getting snow that's going to be substantial. There's a chance for like flurries or maybe a little bit of light snow on Saturday night, but it's looking like weather is not going to be an issue here. It's a series that's fairly new between the Ravens and the Bills. The Ravens lead the series 6-3 all time. This was the one where both teams are riding streaks of at least 6 straight games. This was the one. Knew I had it. Yeah, I appreciate it. That's what I get for trying to add last-minute facts on my phone. I put them in the wrong place. For that, I certainly do apologize. We goof sometimes. Andy mentioned it last week. I will own up to this one today. Again, I've said it before. I will say it again. We need to fire the producer. Andy, what are you looking forward to with the Ravens and the Bills on Saturday night?
I alluded to it in recapping both of these games outings this past weekend. I think this is probably my favorite matchup of the weekend. Two dynamic young quarterbacks, both of whom have produced MVP caliber seasons. Even though Josh Allen doesn't have the hardware, his numbers are up there with anybody who's taken home the MVP trophy. He's had as good a year as Lamar Jackson as anybody in the league. I would argue, maybe with the exception of Aaron Rodgers. But again, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, kind of possibly, the torchbearers for quarterback play, along, of course, with Mahomes in the AFC, moving forward. Last week it was kind of billed as Lamar Jackson versus Derrick Henry, which Lamar Jackson seemed to indicate in his post-game interview he wasn't fond of. He said it was the team versus the team, which is fair to argue because, again, these are two very talented groups across the board. The Bills will have their work cut out for them playing a strong Ravens run D and a group of playmakers led by, Matt Judon, Marcus Peters, etc. Derek Wolfe. It's no gimme. We saw the Colts have success against Buffalo in spurts this past weekend. I do think the Ravens do have a group capable of making plays. You can't hope to stop the Bills. I think we've said that more than once, but you can be successful. You can contain them. We've seen the Steelers do it for a half. We saw the Colts do it again in spurts. I think the Ravens defense is playing as well as maybe any in football, with the exception of the Rams. I think they do have a recipe for success. It's kind of interesting because the Ravens tend to be the team that rides the run game, the time of possession game, the field position, and the Bills are that quick strike, high octane offense. It's kind of a contrast in styles, even though there are some similarities. So it really has the makings of just offensive fireworks all night long. Should be a fantastic game to watch.
Yep, and it's always interesting with those contrasts. Like, it's not that one always beats the other. And in fact, one is it kind of plays into the other's hands, so to speak. If I am the Baltimore Ravens and I have this methodical offense that could dominate time of possession and have these long drives, if you're the Buffalo Bills and are not successful on your quick strike offense and give the ball back to the Ravens without having any sort of real time of possession or quick turnarounds or what have you, right? That plays into the Ravens' hands, because then the Bills won't end up getting enough drives to seemingly win the game. On the other side, right, if the Bills kind of come out to a big lead, and we saw that the Titans come out to a lead against the Ravens, and the Ravens were kind of able to overcome that. But if the Bills are able to, put 2 or 3 quick scores on the board or go up by that margin, it's tough for the Ravens to come back, because, again, they're not that quick strike offense, though they have the firepower to make a splash. Marquise Brown is lightning in a bottle, always, or has been since he came in the league, I guess I should say. And of course, you have Lamar Jackson, who, I mean, that dude can almost score anytime he wants to. But it is a little bit
touchdowns at will.
Yes, no, and so you bring up that long touchdown. I joked before about the Ravens playing with a running back, a quarterback with Lamar Jackson. That's kind of what's everywhere, and that's the narrative, so to speak. But what Lamar Jackson's able to do with his legs doesn't just impact what you can do against the run and how you could scheme up to try to stop the run, but it also impacts how you can play the pass or play coverage behind it as well. We saw on that long touchdown, right? And they mentioned it on the broadcast, but you could see the Titans were in man coverage, right? When the receivers for the Ravens ran their routes, right, the defensive backs in the secondary ran with their dudes, essentially giving Lamar Jackson their back, right, turning to face the receiver that they were covering, right, and not looking at him. Good luck doing that, buddy, because Lamar Jackson is one of those dudes that if he gets even with you, you're already beat. Yeah. So if you're not able to get an angle right away, like if you can't, meticulously get an angle and plan on how you're going to get Lamar. Your best bet, honestly, is to try to use the sideline as a second defender and like funnel him out of bounds, right? But if he gets even with you, you are beat. So, dude is so dynamic. This one is going to be, I think, the game of the weekend. This is the one that I am most looking forward to see. I think there are other stories and other things that might be more fun to kind of follow along with, but I think that this one will be a whole lot of fun. It's worth noting that the Bills last week gave up 472 yards from scrimmage to the Indianapolis Colts. On the other side, when the Ravens played this weekend, they gained 401 yards from scrimmage. That extra yard counts, Andy. Just want to make sure that we are precise and accurate here. 401 yards from always. That's right. From scrimmage against Tennessee. So that one's going to be a lot of fun to watch in Buffalo on Saturday night. That wraps up our Saturday game. Oh, I'm sorry, buddy. Go for it.
Who's your winner?
Well, we haven't picked any of the other ones.
Green Bay. We picked Green Bay to beat LA. Who's your winner in Buffalo?
How do you know that I was not going to pick LA? No, we picked Green Bay. Oh man. I like Baltimore. There it is. I don't like that I like Baltimore because I've loved Josh Allen and this stretch and what he's been able to perform, the performance he's been able to dish out this year has been awesome to watch. I like the Buffalo Bills and their story and them going into the playoffs and finally winning a playoff game. Man, I don't know. The Ravens seem like they are rolling. They got it on both sides of the ball. I think that the Ravens defense edges out the Buffalo Bills defense, and that might be a factor in the game.
It's okay. Go with your gut. I puzzled over it briefly too, but I like Baltimore as well. As you said, they seem to be hitting on all cylinders at the right time. Even against Tennessee, they went blow for blow. It looked like two AFC heavyweights, but Baltimore, showed that kind of just that January football acumen that's different, the ability to close games. Buffalo, we saw very nearly. Josh Allen fumbled, trying to put the game away against Indianapolis. I think there are still some of those jitters, and that's not to discredit him. Obviously, tremendous year. We've espoused about him all year long. But I think in this instance, I tend to favor Lamar Jackson. He has a little more playoff experience. He seems to be he and his team seem to be settling down, learning how to win and play in these big games. I think that'll continue here and advance them to the AFC Championship game. Two other teams trying to play their way into the AFC title game. Predictably, the Kansas City Chiefs, the number 1 seed, the home team at Arrowhead, welcoming the improbable number 6 seeded Cleveland Browns. Believeland is fired up after their victory over my beloved Pittsburgh Steelers. Now the Browns have an even taller task ahead of them, trying to knock off the Chiefs at Arrowhead.
They certainly do, and that was an excellent segue. Not to backtrack, but I found out this week that our beloved friend Kevin May listens to our podcast. I saw him kind of give us a shout out on Snapchat. He is a Buffalo Bills fan. We don't mean to hurt your feelings. Please keep listening to our podcast. The Cleveland Browns certainly have a tall task coming up. The Chiefs lead the all-time series between the Browns and the Chiefs 13-11 and 2. Kevin Stefanski, who did not coach in that Cleveland-Pittsburgh game on Sunday night, is expected to be back with the team on Thursday. So there should be, at least a little bit more normalcy there. So we'll see if that plays a role. It's worth noting that in 2016, obviously we're not going to use this as anything that's going to impact the game, but in 2016, Oklahoma played Texas Tech, where Baker Mayfield was the quarterback at Oklahoma. Patrick Mahomes was the quarterback at Texas Tech. And they put on an offensive clinic. Oklahoma won that game 66-59. Baker Mayfield had 545 yards and 7 touchdowns in that game. Listen to this, buddy. Patrick Mahomes in that game went 52 of 88. He threw the ball 88 times in the football game, completed 52 of them for 700 734 yards. It's video game numbers. Like it's absolutely absurd. 734 yards and 5 touchdowns. We will not see the offensive fireworks that was Oklahoma versus Texas Tech, but we may see offensive fireworks from one team, maybe a little bit more frequently than the others. We know what Kansas City is capable of. We know the complement of weaponry that they have there is astounding. We'll see what the Browns' plans are for stopping Cheetah Tyreek Hill, for stopping Travis Kelce. It's a tall task. This is one where you mentioned Cleveland, and they have a great story. Really, they're coming into this game with nothing to lose because I think everybody, including us, might not be giving them a chance to win.
It's hard to find the recipe for Cleveland to come out victorious in this one. I think, and I know you and I had talked about it off the record. I know you had actually favored Cleveland and Pittsburgh. I do think the recipe was kind of more clear there, and Cleveland followed it to perfection, imposing their will on the ground, out physical in the Steelers and getting the requisite takeaways. I guess it's a possibility because the Browns is the Browns. The Browns know how to play Browns football and play it well. They know how to run the air out of the football, control time of possession, again, convert timely downs the way you need to win, in the modern day NFL. The problem is matching a team like the Kansas City Chiefs blow for blow in that fashion is just going to be tough. Even though the Chiefs don't have a great run defense, they allow almost 123 yards per game on the ground, 4.5 yards an attempt. You could see a recipe for the Browns to, keep moving the chains and try to play keep away, but the potency of the Kansas City Chiefs, and we kind of, talked about the Bills' quick strike offense, but again, we've seen them ebbs and flows. The Chiefs now for 3 years have just proven to be a different animal. They can score 21 and a quarter almost at will. It's just hard to come up with a recipe for the Browns to outscore them in 60 minutes.
No, and we saw that on full display last year when the Chiefs kind of had comeback after comeback. In the playoffs, the Houston one was probably the most famous one from last year. It's just so hard to think about what Cleveland can do to just even slow down that offense. They're so explosive.
And Cleveland is so banged up defensively as well. Hi, Pumpkin.
Nice. The offensive line for the Chiefs is they have given up 12 sacks in the last 6 games, so it's worth keeping an eye on. But then the Browns secondary versus the weapons that I mentioned before, the Legion of Zoom, if you will, averaging 303 yards in the air every game. Yeah, I'm picking the Chiefs. I don't know if I made that clear enough, but I am picking the Chiefs in this one.
Yeah, Chiefs to roll. Kelce, Cousins, Sammy Watkins, Nicole Hardman, Cheetah, Reek, Ty Freaky. Just our
Ty Freaky. I like Ty Freaky. Nice.
Yeah, I thought you'd be with it. Just too much of an onslaught to overcome. Kudos to the Browns again, but the Chiefs will advance to the AFC title game. And in our estimation, host the Baltimore Ravens. Excited to see how the AFC playoff field shakes out nonetheless. The last game on slate in the divisional round, the NFC, we talked about Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. We talked about Patrick Mahomes and Baker Mayfield, kind of changing of the guard at quarterback in the AFC. Gone are the days of Roethlisberger, Brady, Manning, etc. Now on the other side, the old guard will try to hold serve in the NFC. The number 2 seeded New Orleans Saints and Drew Brees will welcome in Tom Brady, the number 5 seeded Tampa Bay Buccaneers, as I alluded to earlier. Possibly the last meeting between these two surefire Hall of Famers. Great way to cap off the weekend of football.
Absolutely, yeah. Tom Brady is currently 43 years old. Drew Brees turns 42 this Friday. Hopefully he hears this before Friday because I know he listens to our show. Happy birthday, Drew. buddy, we appreciate the years. Yeah, we appreciate the years. You've had a hell of a career. If we get to see you again next year, awesome. But if not, it's been a fun ride. So the 85 years between the two quarterbacks, it's the oldest quarterback, the competition or the game between the oldest quarterbacks. There's been a funny picture. I believe Tom Brady retweeted it on his Twitter, where it's Drew Brees and Tom Brady as like old men with big gray beards and white hair. It really is father time against father time. It's going to be fun to watch. We mentioned the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the offensive weapons that they have, but they're also solid on the defensive side of the football. Honestly, these are two comparable teams. The Saints are not super. The Saints are certainly not devoid of weaponry on the offensive side with Alvin Kamara and Michael Thomas, and of course Drew Brees in that backfield. But the Bucs with Tom Brady, Antonio Brown, Chris Godwin, Cameron Brate, Gronk, they got a lot of weapons as well. This one is going to be a fun game to watch as well. It's right up there for me with the Bills, Ravens. Let's see. So Tampa Bay has 3 sacks throughout the last 2 games, and the Saints offensive line has given up the 11th fewest sacks in the NFL. So it I guess kind of interesting up front, but I think that the fireworks in where this game is going to be the most fun to watch, at least from a competitive standpoint, is going to be the skill positions.
Yeah, as you mentioned, Kamara, Thomas, Sanders, Cook, and then Brown, Evans, Godwin, Gronk, Brate, Leonard Fournette. Even if Rojo, Ronald Jones can't go, he is currently questionable with the quad injury. But even still, it's not like there's any shortage of offensive weaponry on either side of the ball. Defensively, I think both of these teams tend to be underrated. They are both replete with talent on the defensive sides of the ball as well. And again, we could just rattle off names: JPP, Shaq Barrett, Levante David, Devin White for Tampa Bay. Another guy I meant to mention earlier, Jordan Whitehead, a safety out of Pitt, actually, I believe second or third year player. He really popped off the screen for me against the Washington football team. I didn't watch a ton of Tampa Bay this year, but there were just several instances where he just, flew into the screen and was making a play in the backfield or close to the line of scrimmage. Kudos to him. I didn't know much about him before, but it looks like he had a solid year. Nice young player, along with Antoine Winfield Jr., not to be confused with his father, who seemingly only retired a few years ago. And yet here his son is making plays, making big hits. We saw the one on the sideline against the Washington football team. I forget, it may have been on Steven Sims or Logan Thomas. I don't know if you recall what I'm talking about. It was fun to watch. He tried to hurdle him, and he just pushed his knees right into his own chest. Oh, boy. He took quite the spill. But, again, a lot of fun to watch. A physical, formidable group. I think, actually, though, New Orleans won the first 2 meetings this year. Well, both of their meetings this year, I should say. I'm favoring Tampa Bay to get the rubber match and advance to the NFC Championship. I think I'm tending to favor history. I've seen both of these quarterbacks in critical moments, and it just always seems to be that Drew Brees' team comes up agonizingly short. It's not a rosy way to predict possibly his career ending, but so many times in the past we've seen Tom Brady break hearts. He'll spare no one. I think they're hitting on all cylinders. I think, if anything, the Washington football team testing them was a wake-up call. I think they're just really rounded into form. I think this game will be closely contested, possibly the game of the weekend, but I'm expecting Tom Brady to advance and set up the matchup with Aaron Rodgers we're all dying to see.
Boy, that would be an absolute great way to kind of cap off the season in the NFC next week. I believe that this game may come down to a final possession, maybe a final 2 possessions or what have you, depending on how everything shakes out. I have trouble ever betting against Tom Brady. I mean, the pick 6 in the playoffs last year, but it's just, I mean, history tends to repeat itself. Tom Brady has the most wins in the playoffs as a quarterback at 31. I am not going to bet against Tom Brady. I will also take the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And much like not betting against Tom Brady, you know who else you don't bet against, Andy?
Is it Alabama?
It is Alabama. So last night we got the last game of our quote-unquote weekend, the 7th game in 3 days. Alabama took on Ohio State in Miami for the college football championship. Alabama looked like they were in a different hemisphere when compared to Ohio State. I thought Ohio State looked really good the week before against Clemson, but they stepped up to Alabama and theoretically got their teeth kicked in. Ohio State scored 24 points in the game. Alabama scored 52. It wasn't close. We had been talking about it during the game, kind of texting back and forth about, maybe 3 possessions isn't in college football what it is in the NFL. And then Alabama just continued to pour it on. For Nick Saban, this is his 14th season at Alabama. He wins his sixth national championship at Alabama, 7th national championship in total because he did win one at LSU as well. One of the greatest to ever do it, arguably the greatest to ever do it, but that's not a debate that we'll get into here. What'd you think about for the college football championship game last night?
Obviously, Bama roll tide, nothing out of the ordinary. As you said, we were talking about, and I kind of noted to you, Ohio State was game for maybe a quarter and a half. It did seem like they were going to make a game of it. Like these teams went touchdown for touchdown to start, and then Alabama went up 21-14, and Ohio State kicked a field goal. Bama immediately went and scored another touchdown, and at that point, it kind of felt like, I don't think if they can't match them score for score, they're not going to be able to keep up. It felt like a game of Madden in that way. We played Madden on a pro or rookie. It's impossible to play defense. So you're just going touchdown for touchdown. It seems anyone who comes up with one stop is going to eventually emerge victorious, and that's what Bama did. Obviously, they have horses defensively, but they shine on offense, and that was apparent last night. They imposed their will on Ohio State. Mac Jones, the quarterback, 36 of 45, 464 yards, 5 scores. You could see how easy they make it for him at times and how easy it is for him at times playing with the cast around him, but he was on the money with several balls, especially several deep balls to Devontae Smith, the Heisman winner. What more can you say about his performance in the first half alone? 12 catches, 215 yards, 3 touchdowns. He continued to assert himself as a high-end NFL prospect. Exciting to watch him play on Sundays. He's so cool, composed, a lot of fun to watch. Another guy, a lot of fun to watch on the Tide, Najee Harris, the running back, 22 carries, 79 yards, 2 scores, an additional 7 catches, 79 yards, and a touchdown through the air. Just a bull load to tackle. Ton of fun to watch. Again, another play where it looked like defensive back for the Buckeyes stood him up, but he's just so powerful. He recoiled from the force of his own blow. That's Najee Harris. A lot of fun to watch. This game, unfortunately, not so much, but kudos to Bama on another well-deserved national title.
Yep. If you might have seen it, and this is for anybody who's listening, if you have not heard Najee Harris's interview after the game, it's awesome. Check it out. Dude has an awesome personality. One of the reporters asks him how he was able to get through the holes so effortlessly, and his response is just phenomenal. And he gives so much props to Ohio State for playing hard. But go listen to that interview. It's a lot of fun to hear. Devontae Smith did end up injuring his finger, and we don't usually talk about hand injuries or finger injuries as nasty. Usually it's the leg injuries when your foot ends up sideways or you tear your ACL or what have you. Those are the nasty injuries, or when you get your head taken off or something like that. Devontae Smith's finger injury was pretty gross to watch. He kind of collided with a defender. You could see that just the impact. It was like his index finger kind of just smashed off the dude's forearm. It was not pretty. He is, expected to go in the top 10, maybe closer to 1 than to 10, but we'll kind of see how that shakes out as we approach the NFL draft in April. But again, kudos to Alabama. Year in and year out, they are going to be in that conversation. A lot of people dislike them for it, but it's a college football dynasty that we get to witness. It's something that should be appreciated. As we tend to be, we talked for entirely too long, but that's what you've come to love and expect. He is Andy. I am Hayden. We like football.
Hot dogs are not sandwiches. Footballs are footballs. We like football.